In our family, we have a lot of feelings. Huh? What are you wearing? No, no, no. Back upstairs. It's just the way she feels. We believe feelings should be celebrated. They're not something to be suppressed. Honey, are we gonna have dinner or?
Well, honey, I asked for red onions and not white. So if you don't feel like listening, I don't feel like making dinner.
But really, when you think about it, your feelings are the truest version of yourself. We as a family believe you should always act on those feelings. Your feelings will never lead you astray.
We've been talking these last couple weeks about our feelings, our emotions, our moods, and how there are times that we allow them to control us. And so because of the mood that we're in, because of the emotion that we're feeling, it creates action. And whenever we are governed by our feelings, then our actions are responses. They are reactions rather than true actions. If I take and I hit my thumb with a hammer, I'm going to react in a way that may or may not be appropriate for small children to hear, because it's a reaction that comes out of the emotion of pain, anger, frustration, whatever may be going on in the moment. For many of us, we allow our emotions to dictate huge portions of our life. Well, I feel frustrated at work, so because I feel frustrated at work, I'm just not going to do anything to make it better, because it's just the way things are, and it's never going to get better, and it's never going to do this, so I'm just going to kind of muddle my way through this. Well, this new relationship makes me feel so good, I'm willing to do things I would normally do because it just feels right. We allow those feelings to create the standard for our actions, and we find out that so many times in life that gets us in huge trouble. We talked about last week that out of the overflow of the heart, our mouth speaks. What we continually put in is what we get out. Today I want to talk about something that's a little bit different, but it ties in so clearly to what takes place as we live out our life and we deal with the emotional creature that God created us to be. Remember, emotions are part of God's creation. They are part of God's intention. The great moments of life are made greater because of the fact that we can experience lows, all of these things in between. In the book of John, we find Jesus addressing his closest followers, his disciples, for the last time before he goes to the cross. This is his last key moment of instruction. We're going to put up a focal verse in just a second, but I want to give you just a little bit of background to it. John 16, verse 27, he says, "For the Father himself loves you, because you have loved me and have believed that I came from God. I came from the Father and have come into the world. Again, I am leaving the world and going to the Father." "Ah," his disciples said, "now you're speaking plainly and not using any figurative language. Now we know that you know everything and don't need to question you. By this we believe that you came from God." So what they're saying is, look, up until now, you've been talking in parables, in stories, in analogies. And now you're finally coming out and saying, "I'm from God. And God has sent me, and God loves you, and I will provide. I will do all of these things." They're like, we get it now. So now that we get it, we are always on your side. We are always behind you. We are your team. And so Jesus responds and says, okay, do you now believe? Look, an hour is coming and has come when each of you will be scattered to his own home, and you will leave me alone. Yet I am not alone, because the Father is with me. And then here is our focal. I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. You will have suffering in this world, but be courageous. I have conquered the world. It says, look, I know that right now you say you're going to be with me, but here's what's going to happen. You are going to experience emotions. You are going to have feelings. There are going to be moods that are going to hit you, that are going to cause you to be scattered. For some of you, that feeling may be despair. For some of you, that feeling may be sadness. For some of you, that feeling may be fear. You're afraid that they're going to lump you in the same boat with me, because what's getting ready to happen to me is not going to be pretty. Then he uses that phrase, be courageous. In some of your translations, if you have a Bible at home, if you're reading along on your phone, you use a different translation than what I'm using this morning. Many translations say, be of good cheer. Now, the original Greek that comes from is the word tharseo. I don't get into that a lot, except here's why it's important. Tharseo does not have an adequate single word translation to our language, to English. It's best translated in phrase because it's more than just a thing. It is an actual action phrase. Tharseo means be of good courage, be of good cheer, take courage. It is an action thing. He says, look, you are going to have to do something. You are going to have to participate in this. This is not something that is just going to be. This is something you must do. Take courage. Be courageous. So what is courage? Our world has lots of different definitions for courage. And we see it talked about in lots of different areas of life. We hear about it a lot in the military. Someone who is courageous, somebody who goes above and beyond. We hear about it in law enforcement. Men and women who put their life on the line every single time that they go into work, and they have to be courageous in their job. Firefighters who will storm into a burning building to help save someone that cannot save themselves. Those are all examples of incredible physical and emotional courage. There are lots of other kinds of courage that we hear about. We hear about those in the sports world that say, this incredible courage to take on the greater opponent. Kind of pales when you compare it to what law enforcement goes through, but it's a form of courage that we hear about. I would say that we see courage displayed each and every day in very, very small ways. That middle school student who sees somebody sitting at lunch by themselves. It would be so much easier just to go over here to this comfortable group of friends. They go sit down and eat lunch, but instead they go and they sit with somebody who doesn't have anybody sitting with them. That takes an act of courage to do that. That person at work who is being asked by the supervisor to maybe fudge some numbers and do some things just to kind of help us get by, and instead he takes that courageous stand to say, no, I have integrity and I'm not willing to do that. Maybe you're just that person whose friends wants them to call off today. Hey man, we're going to go do something. Just call in sick. Nobody's going to care. You got sick days, you got this, you got that, and they have enough courage to say, no, I have greater integrity than that. I'm not going to say that something is when it's not. Courage, we find it displayed within our culture in so many different ways. There are three key things that I want us to learn about the courage that Jesus wants us to live out in the life that He's called us to live. Here's the first one. Courage does not come from emotion, but from foundation. Here's what I mean by that. For some people, we get excited, we get enthused about something, and all of a sudden we get boldness. And we confuse boldness with courage. if it takes an emotion for me to step up and do something, it is not in and of itself courage, because courage comes from a foundational value that says this is what should be. There are times as a parent that you have to have courage when it comes to disciplining your kids. Because sometimes disciplining your kids means that you remove something from them that not only they want, but that you want for them. There's an activity that you want them to do or an opportunity you want them to get, but because they have chosen to disobey, because they've chosen to not fulfill something they were supposed to do, whatever that may be, it takes courage to step up and say, here is the consequence for your action. You see, if it was about the emotion of the moment, it would be, go ahead, it's all right. We'll fix it next time. But if there is a foundational value that says my responsibility as a parent is to raise up a child who will be able to live out the life that God has called them to live, then it takes courage to give appropriate discipline. If integrity is something that brings about courage, it's not about the emotion of the moment. The emotion of the moment is, man, I don't want to tick off my boss. I don't want to upset my friends, but because I have this foundational value of integrity, I have courage when it comes to making those difficult stands. Well, the greatest foundation that we can ever experience in life is the knowledge of Jesus Christ as our personal Lord and Savior. Having a personal relationship with Jesus lays the greatest foundation for our life that we can ever know or experience. And once we have that foundation, it brings about courage that it is impossible to come up with on our own. Jesus is incredibly clear with them. He says, look, you're going to scatter. You're going to take off because you're going to be afraid. You're going to be sad. You're going to be frustrated, whatever the emotion is. So that's what you're going to want to do. But be courageous. Why? Because of the foundation that He has given. You will have suffering in the world, but I have conquered. Some translations say, I have overcome the world. What that means is there is nothing that this world ever could have thrown at Jesus that would have defeated Him. Death could not defeat Him. Pain and torture could not defeat Him. Ostracizing Himself from the community, nothing could defeat Him because He conquered the world. Courage does not come from emotion, it comes from foundation. I want to skip over to Acts 27 for just a second and say that I'm going to read some other verses, but Kenny, just put up that focal verse when we get there. Give you a little bit of background. We're looking at the life of Paul. Paul, this incredible apostle that went all over the place and told people about Jesus, specifically going to those who had not grown up with an understanding of the Messiah, the people called the Gentiles, and taking this incredible good news of Jesus to them. And he was imprisoned over and over again, and he was run out of town, had all sorts of crazy things happen to him. He is now at a point where not only has he been imprisoned, but he has been put on a ship to be taken to a place of exile, and where he's going to be put away from everyone else, where he can't have the same kind of impact on others that he's had. That's how dangerous they felt he was. Because there was such an incredible following. He was making such a difference everywhere that he went. There were these groups of believers springing up and making a difference in their communities. And so they put him on this ship and they sent him away. And as they are being sent away, all of a sudden the seas start to get kind of crazy. And then they end up having issues with the boat, and all these different things happen. And I'm going to pick it up in Acts 27, verse 19. It says, on the third day of their journey, they threw the ship's gear overboard with their own hands. Now, if you understand what that means, the ship's gear, they're not talking about stuff that you would use to lighten the load of the ship. The first day, if you were having trouble at this time traveling by sea, you would take all of your cargo and you would throw it overboard. because that cargo can affect the balance and control of the ship, and so you would toss it. But the word gear that they're talking about today, we would understand as gear and tackle. That means all of the stuff necessary to control the ship, all of the rigging, all of the stuff that you would use to be able to direct the ship. They are so desperate for this thing just to stay afloat. They are throwing everything overboard they can by their own hands. Not something that was swept out to sea. This is something they are so in despair. They are so at their end, they're throwing everything overboard. For many days, neither sun nor stars appeared, and the severe storm kept raging. Finally, all hope that we would be saved was disappearing. Since many were going without food, Paul stood up among them and said, "You men should have followed my advice not to sail from Crete and sustain this damage and loss." Because he warned them before they left. But who's going to listen to a prisoner, right? Now I urge you to take courage, because there will be no loss of any of your lives, but only of the ship. For this night an angel of the God I belong to and serve stood by me and said, "Don't be afraid, Paul, you must stand before Caesar. And look, God has graciously given you all those who are sailing with you." Verse 25, this is key. "Therefore, take courage, men, because I believe God that it will be just the way it was told to me." Take courage. It's that exact same Greek word, tharseos. Be courageous. Because I believe God that it will be just the way it was told to me. Second thing I think is key about courage is that courage is displayed not in easy times, but in the difficult times. When everything is going fine, there's no need to be courageous. When everything's going good, there's no need to have to step up into a difficult situation. But here, at this moment of greatest crisis, when they are fearing for their lives, Paul steps up and says, "Be courageous, because I believe God that things will be the way He said they were going to be." Can I tell you one of the greatest struggles that I have right now with people that claim to be followers of Jesus Christ? One of the greatest struggles that I have right now is this whole woe is me, doomsday kind of feel that people are throwing around each and every day. I see it on social media. I hear it in conversations in the coffee shop. I see it all over the place. But can you believe what's happening? Can you believe what's happening in our government? Can you believe what's happening in our world? Can you believe what's happening in our community? Can you believe what's happening in our school? Can you believe how bad things are? It's all going to implode. Well, can I tell you? If I truly believe that God is in control, if I truly believe that God has my well-being in mind, if I truly believe that He has a plan and a purpose for what is taking place within our culture and nation and church, if I believe all of those things, then how in the world can I sit there and go, woe is me? I feel like Paul is saying to us the same way he was saying to them, buck up, be courageous. It's not when everything's going good that we have to stand firm. It's when it looks like things are difficult and we choose to stand firm that it makes a greater impact on those around us. It's not when things are going well. It's when things are most difficult that we are called to stand up and be courageous. I also believe that courage is contagious. During one of the bloodiest days in human history, definitely the bloodiest day in U.S. history, was the Battle of Antietam during the Civil War. It was this horrific battle where thousands upon thousands upon thousands of Americans lost their lives. More men lost their lives that day than in the Normandy attacks in World War II. More men lost their lives than in the Spanish-American War, the War of 1812, and the Vietnam War all put together. In one day, there was this horrific loss of life. And there was one place that was bloodier than any place else. It was called the cornfield. It literally was a cornfield that men marched into. And the first time they walked into the cornfield to go attack the enemy, this was a Union regiment going to attack Confederates. When they walked through the first time, the corn was standing higher than the men around them. And as they went through and they were repelled, all of a sudden the corn started to be cut down, and by the third charge, the corn had been decimated because of cannon and shot fire and rifles and men marching through and all this stuff. And it was littered with human bodies. There was a Pennsylvania regiment that was making this charge that the commanders had sent them into, and as they were going into the cornfield, into just this absolute just devastation and destruction that had happened for them, they started to freak out, and even the officers turned and started to run away and retreat. There was a lone private. In fact, when they talk about him, they said he looked like a boy, one of those baby-faced kind of folks, you know? And he found a spot. And he started waving his hat. He said, "Die like men, boys. Don't run like dogs." And one young private shamed the supposed courage of the leading officers. And they turned and they faced the battle. If you had said before the Battle of Antietam, if you had looked all across the thousands of Union soldiers that were getting ready for that attack, if you had said pick out the one man that will be most vital to leading others today, you wouldn't have picked this guy out if you had 20,000 chances. Well, it has to be the general. Maybe it's the lieutenant out in the field. Maybe it's that grizzled sergeant who's walked alongside his men for so long and they have his respect. Oh no. It was this kid that nobody expected to stand but had the courage to say, "This is the task I have been called to, and I will not run away from it." Can I tell you, as followers of Jesus Christ, we have been commanded, Tharseo, be courageous. When those around you are saying, "Oh my gosh, isn't it just crumbling around us?" we get the opportunity to stand up and say, "No, my God is in control." Can you believe how horrible things are? I know things are difficult, but I'm telling you, my God is in control. When relationships are crumbling, we get the opportunity to stand up and say, "But God is in control." When families are being broken, we get the opportunity to stand up and say, "But God is in control." When it feels like things are falling apart at work, we stand up and say, "But my God is in control," whether it's at this job or another one or another one. I know He is in control, and I will take courage. Tharseo. How desperately our world needs to see courage. So how do we live it out? How do we do it? How do we walk out of here today with more courage than what we walked into? One, we have to have the foundation. Courage comes not from emotion at the moment, but it comes from that solid foundation of Jesus Christ. And if you are here today and you don't know what it means to have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ, can I beg you, come find me. Come find me after today and say, "I just want to know what that is. I want to know what that looks like." I would love to have a conversation with you about that, because it is the absolute foundation of our life. We have to understand that courage is displayed in difficult times, not the easy times. And what that means is that God may be allowing you to go through some difficult moments just so others around you can see the courage that only He can give. when they see that, I am telling you, courage is contagious. People are longing for someone to rally around. Of their life, who can you show contagious courage to this week? God, I thank you for the opportunity to hear from your word. God, I thank you for the challenge of our sale. We would be of good cheer, that we would take courage, that we would have the opportunity to make a difference in someone else's life, not because of the emotion of the moment, but because of the foundation of a relationship with you. God, we have no reason for courage outside of you. But God, in you, we have every reason for courage. God, let us not show worry. Let us not show fear. Let us not get all freaked out by everything going on around us. But God, let us remain steadfast and sure. And just as Paul said, I believe what my God has said. God, let us believe what you have said. Let us be courageous. God, we love you. We thank you for this opportunity today. We pray it in Jesus' name.